It was a crisp autumn evening in San Francisco, and the crowd gathered in a sleek modern venue, eagerly awaiting Elon Musk's keynote speech. It was a charity event aimed at raising funds for underprivileged children, but no one in the room could have anticipated what would happen next. The usual audience of tech moguls, entrepreneurs, and Silicon Valley power players had come to hear Elon Musk talk about innovation, space exploration, and the future of humanity. Instead, they were about to witness a side of Musk they had never seen before, a side that revealed a depth of emotion and vulnerability that took everyone by surprise. As the lights dimmed and the crowd quieted, Elon Musk took the stage. His usual confident, almost enigmatic presence was there, but tonight there was something different about him. Dressed in a simple black suit, he stood at the podium, his hands resting lightly on the edge. The crowd waited in anticipation, expecting the usual talk about Mars, electric cars, or artificial intelligence. But Elon began in a way that no one had expected. "Tonight, I want to share a story," he said, his voice calm but heavy with emotion. "It's a story that has shaped the way I approach challenges, the way I see the world, and the way I've tried to build something bigger than myself." The room went silent. People leaned in, curious to hear what was coming. Elon rarely spoke about his personal life or emotions. He was known for his futuristic ideas, his hard-driven ambition, and his sometimes unyielding approach to business. But tonight, he was opening a door to something more. "I've always felt like an underdog," Elon continued, his voice softening. "I think a lot of people think of me as someone who's always had it all figured out, but that's not true. I've been David, not Goliath, for much of my life." The room was still. People exchanged glances, sensing the sincerity in his words. Maybe it's because when you look at the giants in this world, those who have the power, the resources, and the confidence, it can feel impossible to measure up. When I first started Tesla, there was no way we were supposed to succeed. We didn't have the resources that the big automakers had. We didn't have the decades of legacy that companies like Ford or GM had built. We were just a tiny little startup in a world full of Goliaths. Elon paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. He could feel the energy shift in the room. The audience was no longer just listening to a businessman. They were listening to a man who had faced countless obstacles, who had dared to challenge the status quo and change the world, despite the odds stacked against him. "When you're facing giants," he continued, "it's easy to think that you don't stand a chance. But I've learned something over the years, something I want to share with all of you tonight." He looked up from his notes, meeting the eyes of the crowd. David didn't have the size or the strength of Goliath, but he had something more powerful. He had the will to fight. He had the belief that he could do something extraordinary. He believed in himself, and he believed in his ability to make a difference, no matter how small he was in comparison. Elon's eyes softened, and for the first time he allowed himself to be vulnerable with the crowd. "I've been that David in so many situations in my life. I was that David when I risked everything to create PayPal. I was that David when I almost lost it all with SpaceX and Tesla. And I was that David when I was laughed at for wanting to take humans to Mars." A hush fell over the audience. People were captivated, not by the billionaire entrepreneur standing before them, but by the man who had fought against adversity time and time again. "But here's the thing," Elon said, his voice growing steadier. "David didn't just face Goliath. He faced fear, doubt, and every reason to give up. But he had faith in his slingshot and a few smooth stones, and that was enough." Elon paused, his eyes scanning the room. He had their full attention. "SpaceX was never supposed to succeed. We failed over and over. We had rockets explode, companies doubted us, and people laughed at the idea of reusable rockets. But I knew, just like David, there was a way to make it work. You have to be willing to keep going when everything tells you to stop, and you have to be willing to take on Goliath, no matter how big he seems." A wave of emotion seemed to wash over Elon as he spoke. The usually stoic figure was no longer the distant tech mogul, but a person who had lived through the struggles and triumphs of building something monumental from nothing. "You see," Elon said, his voice thickening, "life doesn't always hand you a perfect slingshot, but it does give you the opportunity to aim at the things that seem impossible, the things that no one else dares to try. And that's when you realize you don't need to be bigger than Goliath. You just need to believe that you can face him, that you can overcome him, even if it takes everything you have. For a moment, the room was completely still. Then, slowly, the audience began to clap. At first, it was soft, uncertain, but then it grew into a resounding standing ovation. The people in the room weren't applauding his businesses or his achievements. They were applauding the person who had faced impossible odds and had emerged victorious, not because of his size or strength, but because of his unwavering belief. Elon smiled, his usual sharp demeanour softened by the raw sincerity of the moment. "I'm not perfect," he said quietly, "but I've learned that it's okay to be David. And if there's one thing I hope you take from this tonight, it's that you don't need to be a giant to change the world. You just need to believe that you can, and you need to have the courage to try." Tears glistened in the eyes of many in the crowd as they stood and clapped, not just for the man on stage, but for the message he had shared. In that moment, Elon Musk wasn't the billionaire innovator or the founder of Tesla and SpaceX. He was simply a man who had fought for his dreams, overcome insurmountable obstacles, and had a message for everyone who had ever doubted themselves. As the applause died down, Elon took a deep breath and spoke one final time. "Don't let anyone tell you that you can't take on the giants in your life. Believe in your slingshot. Believe in your vision. And no matter how many times you fall, get back up, because in the end, David always has a chance." And with that, Elon Musk left the stage. The crowd remained standing, still absorbing the power of the words they had just heard. It wasn't just a story about overcoming the odds. It was a story about hope, perseverance, and the unwavering belief that no matter how small we may feel, we all have the power to face our giants. But the impact of his words didn't stop when the lights came up. As the audience filtered out of the auditorium, many were seen talking in small groups, sharing their thoughts on what had just been said. Some were wiping tears from their eyes, moved by Elon's vulnerability. Others stood in quiet reflection, as though contemplating the challenges in their own lives, feeling a renewed sense of strength. In the lobby, a man approached Elon. He was shaking, unsure of how to start, but finally he spoke. "Mr. Musk, your word, they changed something inside me. I've been trying to build a business for years, but I kept hearing that I'd fail. Everyone said it was too big of a challenge. But now I feel like I can do it." Elon smiled softly, the familiar spark of encouragement lighting his eyes. "That's exactly what I mean. It's about believing in your ability to make an impact, even if the odds aren't in your favor. Don't let fear stop you from trying." As Elon made his way toward the exit, he noticed a young woman sitting by herself, her arms wrapped around her knees. She was staring at the floor, deep in thought. He walked over and gently asked, "Are you okay?" Shay looked up at him, and her eyes were filled with emotion. "Your story, so it hit me harder than I expected," she said, her voice trembling. "I've been going through a tough time lately, feeling like nothing was ever going to work out, but hearing you speak made me realize that even in my struggles I can still find a way forward. I don't have to be perfect. I just have to keep trying." Elon nodded, giving her a reassuring look. "You've got this," he said quietly. "Keep fighting for what you want. The world is full of challenges, but that's what makes it worth fighting for." As he stepped outside into the cool evening air, Elon looked up at the sky, lost in thought. The lights of the city seemed dim compared to the stars above. He had spent his life dreaming big, challenging what seemed impossible, and pushing through barriers others thought insurmountable. But tonight, he had shared a side of himself that few ever saw, and in doing so, he had connected with people on a deeper level than he ever thought possible. The sound of the crowd still echoed in his ears, but it was different now. It wasn't just applause, it was the sound of people finding hope again, of people believing in themselves despite their own doubts, and it made everything he had ever worked for feel even more meaningful. As the evening drew to a close and the people dispersed into the streets, Elon Musk's words continued to resonate. David had always had the chance to defeat Goliath, not because of his size, but because he had the courage to face the giant. And now, in the hearts and minds of everyone who had been there that night, the giant of doubt seemed a little smaller and the hope for victory a little brighter. Elon Musk had done more than speak about triumph. He had shown people that even the smallest among them had the potential to achieve greatness. And maybe, just maybe, they had the power to change the world.